Hey guys, I'm going to go over with you this thing called the law of supply and demand. I'm going to define what supply and demand are and how it works, and I'm going to go over a few examples of how it works, and I'm going to go over the activity that I want you to do. In the chapter about Africa, I think you learned about this guy named Mansa Musa, and I think he was like the richest guy in history, I think, or one of the richest guys in history. Um, and that's because he had resources like gold and ivory. Those are very valuable resources, and there's a lot of it in Africa. Um, and so there would be a lot of trading that would be going on in Africa, especially when European countries came over. Now they would trade with them, but they also a lot of those white European settlers or whatever, they would come in and trade, but of course they would also colonize Africa and also enslave a lot of those African natives. Um, but there would be some trading going on, and it all has to do with a nation's economy. If you don't know what an economy is just based on a country's production of goods, selling of goods, and its buying of goods. So, say for example, I want to, produce this pen. There would be some sort of manufacturer or factory that makes this pen, and then it is being sold by some company, maybe like I guess Pilot is a company, or by BIC, they would be a company, and then they just sell them. And they sell it for a price. Okay, so that's kind of what an economy is. But more specifically with the law of supply and demand, it's pretty much based around supply is like how much you have of a certain product, and the demand is how much a person wants that product and how much they're willing to spend for that product. So, for example, supply right here is the item available for consumers to purchase are the supply. The Africans tried to produce only as much gold, ivory, and other items as the traders and the Africans themselves wanted. If there was a greater supply of gold and ivory than people wanted, the price would go down. Okay, so that is supply. Is just the those items that are available for buying, and demand is how much consumers are willing to buy at a given price. It is called demand. Let's say I want this pen. Well, I would be willing to spend, I don't know, $1 for this pen, and it's a good pen. It's not. I mean, works perfectly fine, but I certainly wouldn't pay like $10 for this. If it was expensive if it was like a $10 pen, that'd be crazy. I would never spend that much money on a pen. But like for a pen like this, I would say like $1. That's my demand. How much demand I have for this pen. Right. So on here, this is a chart for the law of supply and demand. I'm gonna go through a couple of these, and then I'll kind of give some examples. So on here, you have this top row, which is all about the supply. Supply goes up, supply goes down, supply stays the same. And then on this column right here, you have the demand side. Demand goes up, demand goes down, and demand stays the same. So, and wherever these different rows or columns meet up, that determines the price. So let's look at that for example. Let's say the supply goes up. And let's say you have this row, demand goes up. So where does the column for supply goes up and demand goes up? Well, they meet right here. And that means that the prices do not change. So the price do not change. It's on the same row as demand goes up, and it's underneath the same column as supply goes up. And you can do that for any number of scenarios. So let's say supply stays the same and demand stays the same. Where do they meet? They meet right there. Prices do not change. So I want to go over a few of these. And one of these things is actually going on right now in America with oil, or it was a few weeks ago. So let's kind of look at this. Supply goes up, but the demand goes down. Let's kind of go through a scenario. So in America, because of the coronavirus pandemic, America has actually been producing oil, and I think America also gets oil from other countries as well. So their supply of oil is going up. They're getting in more and more oil, and of course we use oil to make gasoline, I believe. So our supply, or the amount, or the items that is available to us, oil, is going up. But our demand for oil is going down. We realize that because people are being asked to stay home and companies aren't in business, you don't need school buses that much. Airplanes aren't flying as much. People aren't driving as much because they're staying home. So they probably don't need gas, or they probably don't need to use oil as much. So their demand for oil is becoming lower. They just don't need it as much. So when you have oil that is continually going up and you just don't need that much of it, the price is going to go down. Because if you don't need something, why would you raise the price? The price is actually going to fall, and that's what was happening with gas prices. Gas prices were, I think, over $2 for a while, and now it's down to like $1.43 or something, which is awesome for me and your parents, for people who drive, because I can fill up my gas tank for like $20. That's awesome. I love that. So yeah, those are just some examples. Another one would be supply stays the same and the demand goes down. If I have 5,000 pens, but most people in the country already have pens and they don't need them, so their demand goes down, the prices are going to go down. Also, this one, supply goes down, but the demand goes up. Let's say I have this Echo Dot. This is the greatest thing ever. I can ask it whatever I want, and it'll give me information. I could say, Alexa, what's 5 plus 5?
5 plus 5 is 10.
Thanks. It's the greatest thing ever. I can ask it, and it'll do whatever. It'll know anything. It can set timers for me. It knows what's going on in the news. I can ask it, and it'll tell me. It's really, really great. I love it. But let's say I have the only one left. Let's say I have the only one left in town, and people realize how great it is, and people want it. That means the demand goes up. So what's going to happen? If I have the last one, I might think, you know what? I could probably raise the price. I could probably see how much. There's probably some rich guy out there who's probably willing to spend a lot of money for it. And so I'm going to raise the price. I'm going to see how much money I can get out of it. So basically, those are just some scenarios. That is the law of supply and demand. The higher the supply is, and let's say the higher demand there is, prices will rise. But you'll have to kind of go through each one of these scenarios. Okay. So what I would like for you to do is you kind of look back on this next page. And let's see, I'll have to bring it in a little closer. So in this, you're going to pretend that you are a citizen of an imaginary African country called Tanzamar. You are located near some gold miners, and you also have elephant herds in the surrounding area. area. Predict what will happen to your economy in each of the following situations. Okay. So what you're going to do is that you're going to look through each of these 4 situations. And you are going to say whether or not you're going to say if the demand goes down, if the supply goes up, or if the prices fall. So I'm going to kind of give you a few examples. All right. So let's kind of look at this. Let's kind of look at this first one. Let's see. Okay. Number 1. It says that a band of Tuareg brings news that new gold mines have been discovered farther north, and merchants traveling across the Sahara have been stopping to trade there rather than coming south to your country. All right. So when you kind of look at this, you realize that okay, there's a band of Tuareg people who it's just a group of people, and they say that there are new gold mines that have been discovered farther north. But if you remember in the introduction, you already live near some gold mines, but some other people have discovered new gold mines. So what's going to happen with their supply of gold? Is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? Is it going to stay the same? Well, it's going to go up. And then, but also merchants traveling across the Sahara have been stopping to trade there rather than coming south to your country. So what does that, how does that affect the demand? If they're not stopping in your country, if they're not stopping in your country of Tanzamar, they're going to go somewhere else. So they're not going to demand your gold anymore. So the demand in your country, it's going to go down. And so what happens when the demand goes down and the supply goes up? Prices are going to fall. Right? So on like a separate sheet of paper, I just kind of want you to write on the top law of supply and demand activity and just write 1, 2, 3, 4 for each of the 4 situations. And I kind of did the first one with you, and it was the demand goes down, supply goes up, so the prices fall, right? So I want you to try to do the 2, 3, and 4 on your own and just kind of fill that out. And you can just take a picture of it and then just send it to me when you're done. If you have any questions, you can just email it to me.